So, I'm really happy to be here. I'm actually from England, and I'm from Manchester. I just noticed this morning Manchester just 6 miles up the road. I hadn't realised that when I got on the plane to come here. Okay. So the title here is Hippos and Heroes, and actually I could have entitled this, What Technology Do Children Need in the 21st Century and How Do We Design It? And that's not such a good title because it's just nothing like as exciting as Hippos and Heroes. So I'm not going to massively talk about hippos, but you need to look out for the hippos as we talk through this little tirade. A little bit about me. I have 4 children of my own. They are my own, and they've had children of their own. So I'm actually a grandmother to 2 small children, and I'm a mother to 4 big children. And I've spent a lot of time looking at children, sometimes not so great. But my history is I used to be a teacher, so I first went into teaching. I was a maths teacher, and I was a maths teacher in high schools in England for about 10 years. Then I had a bit of a moment and changed and became a professor in child-computer interaction. So I'm in computer science, so I have an interest in technologies. And I like technologies. I'm not one of these people who doesn't like technologies. I'm putting that out there now because what I'm going to say, you might think, oh, she doesn't like technologies. My phone is here for a reason. It's not here just because I'm busy texting in between times. So if we think about what technologies children need going forward, you kind of think, well, that's fairly obvious. And you think we'd all know the answer to that. We'd think, oh, yeah, it's obvious what children need. You know, common sense tells us they want technologies they can socialise with. They need technologies that they can get in touch with each other with. They need technologies that can entertain them. You've probably all seen your own kids or someone else's kids playing away on phones. You know, they need YouTube. They need TED Talks, clearly. So we kind of think we know what the answer is in terms of what technologies children need. But I sometimes want to kind of roll back time. I really do sometimes want to roll back time. I was brought up in a very small house in northern Manchester, industrial town, and I had a small house, and at the end of my row of houses there was a very big end terrace. And an end terrace, for those of you who don't understand terraces, it's like the end of a big row of houses in a big row. So the end terrace is a great big brick wall. And the beauty of a great big brick wall is you can play ball against it, you know, so you can kick on the wall and you can have a good time. And by this big brick wall, there was a whole load of scrubby land. It was like horrible bits of trees and things. And we used to go in there and play as children. We used to go in there and play and hide. We used to hide in there. And we also used to get on our bikes and go out, and we'd only come home when the sun came back. You know, the sun vanished, we'd come home. So we'd go out all day. My parents never knew where we were. And that was kind of neat. And then I had my own children. My first child, I never knew where she was either because she was pre-mobile phone. And she would go out to town. She said, I'm going to town, Mum. And I'd say, well, which town are you going to? It was a bit like, I've been staying in Canandaigua, is it? And it's in between Syracuse and Rochester, I've discovered. So if my eldest child would have been born in Canandaigua, she'd have gone to town and I'd have thought, you're going to Rochester, or are you going to Syracuse? And I used to say to my daughter, just tell me which direction you're going in, and then if you don't come home, I'll know where to look. And this is how I survived those sort of early days. And there's something very interesting about how childhood has changed over the last 10 years, well, a 10-year space between my first child and my last child. And now, of course, I'm seeing these new little children, you know, who can swipe and tap and do all the gesture things. And that's cool. I don't have a problem with that. It's kind of cool. There's a book in... I think it's definitely an English book. There's a book by Michael Frayn that I'm particularly fond of. It's a book called Spies. If any of you have read Spies, you might understand why it's such a nice book. And it's actually a book about childhood. And I've got a little quotation from that book here that I'm just going to pick out. And it's a story about some children, and they befriend a soldier, and it's around about war times. And so obviously this predates mobile phones. It predates internet technology. It predates all those things. And they play around in the front of their house, and they've got a little front house, and they've got a little tin of treasures stashed under the hedge in the front garden. And I have a vague memory, but it might be one of those constructed ones, that I had a tin of treasures once stashed in the front of my garden. I might not have had, but I like to think I did have anyway. If that would have been sort of nice. And there's a little line in there, and it goes like this. It says, for a moment, I am a child again, and everything before me, all the frightening, half-understood promises of life. And I love that. I think that captures childhood. And now as a grandmother, when you're a grandmother, any of you grandmothers will know, it's kind of indulgent. You know, you don't have to do the hard stuff. You just enjoy the little children, the little people. But you do worry and you concern yourself with what's coming for these children. You're sort of a bit concerned about the childhoods that they're going to have. And what sort of bothers me in all this space is this idea of how you manage to be a bit lost and how you manage to be a bit found. So we actually have a slide here. So there's something interesting about how we manage to be lost and found in digital worlds. So yes, I've got 4 children. I've lost pretty much all my children at different times. The first one I lost when she was about 3, and we left her behind in a petrol station. You call that a gas station here. And we actually just forgot we had her. She was like very quiet. And we drove off, and somebody in the car said, I think we've lost Elodie, she's called. I think we've lost Elodie. And I'm saying, no, don't be stupid. She's just hiding in the car. But she wasn't. So we had to go back and find her. She didn't have a phone. You know, she was 4. She didn't have a phone. We kind of remembered where we'd left her, and we went back. And she'd said to the lady in the petrol station that she lived in a house with a slopey roof. And that was all she knew about anything. And then several years on from that, I wrote an article in a magazine about mobile phone technology for children. And I'd observed my own children having mobile phones. And what they would do is they would go out with their mobile phones in the morning, like this, you know, to school. And at school, they had to turn the mobile phones off, so they turned them off. And of course, they never turned them on again. I mean, that was a bit of a problem. They forgot to turn the phones back on again. So when I was ringing them, you know, maybe later on that evening, they'd forgotten to turn the phones on, so I couldn't get in touch with them. And then there was this creeping anxiety started to fall into parenting and childhood, because suddenly you started to worry when your child didn't answer the phone. And that's kind of weird, really, because A, why should they answer a phone? And how on earth did we get ourselves to this place where the phone becomes the thing that matters? So I'm going to just put my phone down. Because, you know, the phone doesn't really matter. What we've done with the phone is we've made it to be a little bit of a problem, I think, for childhood. I think the phone has become slightly problematic for childhood. One of my children, my grown-up children, doesn't have a mobile phone, cell phone. He doesn't have one. He's survived without a cell phone. He constantly gets lost. He's constantly not anywhere to be found. But he likes that state, and he says he enjoys lostness as a concept. However, in a dangerous world, we also want our children to be found, clearly. You know, and I've anxietied over this particular one of my children and thought, oh, he's not got a phone. What if something goes wrong? So there's a bit of a problem here for technology design, because we've got a product that doesn't seem to be able to be malleable to the needs of children, of young adults. There's sort of a problem somewhere in the design of this product. And this takes us to Hippos. So this is my hippo. This is my hippo. He's called Mr. Hippo. Mr. Hippo comes with me to my research. When I do research studies in England, Mr. Hippo comes with me. And he's often to be found sat there in the room with children. And I work with children, and with children, we design new technologies. Mr. Hippo comes to these classes because I say to the children, I want you to design for Mr. Hippo. And I say, look at Mr. Hippo. And he's quite big. You can see how big he is. He's quite big. And he has no hands, really. Have you noticed he's a little bit disabled? He's got no fingers. The other problem with Mr. Hippo is that his ears are a very long way from his mouth. You know, he's got a funny shaped head. So that's a kind of a problem for him also, for some technologies. And the main problem with Mr. Hippo is he doesn't speak English. And when I talk to children about Mr. Hippo, and I say, Mr. Hippo doesn't speak English, I said, so, you know, you need to design something that he can use. He's not the same as you. And the children take this in very well. One child asked me, does he speak French? I said, no, sorry, he doesn't speak French. I said, he only speaks Hippo. And this wonderful moment, and I'm a researcher, I'm a professor, I have the best job in the world, right? I really do. It's like the best job. All my kids want my job, right? All my team want my job. I think they've thrown me out while I've been over here. But this child said, I used to speak Hippo, but I think I've forgotten it now. And this was one of these magic moments, because what it tells you is that children can bring something very magical into the design of things. So I think, and I've got 11 seconds left, I think that what we need to create something that is not the mobile phone, to create some technology that helps children be who they really, really want to be, we need to talk to the children, the teenagers who are going to live those lives. So my complaint, if you like, is that software engineers are not the right people to design technologies for our children. And that's where I'm going to stop. I need to thank Martha and Kate and Brad and Charlie who put me up so well while I've been here. I do need to say that. And thanks very much to Allendale. I've had a great week here. It's a wonderful school. And thanks very much for having me.